Investor Intelligence provides general information only. You should consider seeking independent advice to see how this information relates to your unique circumstances. Please refer to the terms and conditions available at investorintelligence.com.au for more.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Investor Intelligence, brought to you by the team at the Property Mentors. It's your weekly podcast for all things investment and hosted by me, Phoebe Sikowski-Wallace. So joining me again is Jason Colbey from Imperial Property. I said that wrong. I think I said it wrong in the last episode. So Imperial, who specialises in conveyancing in Victoria, New South Wales and Queensland. Welcome back, Jason.
Oh, it's good to be back. Thank you so much.
We say that as if we didn't actually just record 2 episodes in the same day.
It's been so long. How have you been?
It's so good. No, you're a busy man, so I appreciate you doing 2 in one day. So, Jason, last time we spoke, we sort of spoke about your career journey and all the roles that you've worked in as far as property. And then we talked a little bit about conveyancing and your role doing that and the importance of it. But when we were discussing what we wanted to talk about in both episodes, you mentioned desktop valuation. So this is a term that Herman and Malika actually touched on in their last episode together, and how a desktop valuation in a more inappropriate sort of circumstance actually hindered a property purchase for one of their members, which was really sad to hear. And so I feel that for those who were hearing that term for the first time, we're hearing that a desktop valuation is a bad thing or it's a lazy thing. But that's not the case. I mean, it was in that case, but it's not always. So I wanted to talk to you about them in a bit more depth as someone who comes across them quite a lot, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
As I said, we've touched on them before, but can you explain to me what a desktop valuation is and how it differs from other types of valuations?
Absolutely. So I have to just step in and say that the correct terminology is more of a market evaluation or a market estimate, purely because desktop valuations, there is a huge difference between a proper valuation and a market estimate. The market estimate will take, or your desktop valuation will take a subject property, look into that property, find comparable sales in the area over a specific time frame, generally 3 to 6 months, and say, okay, if all these similar properties sold for this, well, then your property technically is worth between this and this, or the estimate for this property is between this and this. What a valuer will do is so much more in depth. So we're talking size of rooms, quality of fixtures and fittings, how high are your ceilings, are there easements, how big's the land, all the rest of that. There are so many things that come into account when you do a proper valuation. You and I have spoken about this before, where I've seen a valuation, and it was my own, come in under because the name of 2 of the rooms on the floor plan, on the working drawing, were study and rumpus room as opposed to 4th bedroom and rumpus/5th bedroom. And as a result of changing terminology, like that can have an effect in the value of a property to a proper valuer.
That's crazy.
Whereas a market estimate is, this is a subject property, this is what the subject property is. In the area, in the last 3 to 6 months, 10 sales happened and 6 of them are similar to that property. So going off that, seeing what they're worth, this one's better, this one's worse, this one's kind of similar, and that'll kind of spit out an estimate range.
Okay. And what stage of the process does a desktop estimation happen?
So most of the times they're generally called comparative market analysis. So you'll hear a real estate agent say CMA or comparative market analysis, and that's what they'll do. So they'll come to give you an idea as to what the market has determined the property value to be. Now, it's not the value, it's just based on other sales, this is a range that we're confident with, or this is the range it's given us, but, given the state of the current market, we might have to adjust for that. But what it does is it doesn't give you a proper valuation that say a bank would use when it comes to lending money or anything like that, gives you an idea that if you were to sell your house, you could probably get this much money.
Okay, so that's why it's estimation as opposed to valuation, because valuation is a little bit more concrete and estimation is a little bit more.
Well, that's exactly right. Well, that's right. Like generally a valuation, most people will only get a valuation when it comes to borrowing money from a bank or doing an extension or a renovation, or whenever it's ordered by somebody like a bank, or you might get a valuation because of a partnership dissolving or whatever it be. So you need that concrete valuation to say this is basically what that building, land, fixtures and fittings, everything there is worth, and go forth, right?
Okay.
Whereas a market analysis is great. You've got a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 2-car garage in this suburb. 3 houses that are very similar to yours sold between 8 and 850. So yours has higher end fixtures and fittings. So we might be able to get 850 to 900.
So what's the difference? What's the connection between the valuation and contract price, and how can them being different? What can that mean for someone's property purchase?
So when it comes to the market analysis, when it comes to the CMA, a CMA can give you information. So most data platforms, right, will be able to generate those CMAs for an agent. There are limitations to those CMAs, and one of them really is that the data that's there available for the subject property is generally the data that was available at the last sale, which means that if the last sale was 50 years ago and the property was all original and it sold for $15,000, when it comes back to be reviewed again, it may have had an extension. It may have had a pool added. It may have had all these extra additions to the property added, which is really going to boost the value of that house to somebody looking at buying it. But according to the software that you're using, at the time of the last sale, it was just a 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom, original 1974, whereas now it's a 5-bedroom, 3-bathroom, completely renovated. So that's where the CMA and the contract price can vary, because your agent will generally go through the property before they sell it and say, wow, look, you've got hardwood floors. That's a huge tick. Wow, you've got ducted heating and cooling. That's a huge tick. There's a pool out the back. I didn't know that. There we go, huge tick. So, the information they're getting on one platform, while isn't a negative at all, it's just the data that was available at the time of the last sale.
Just hasn't been updated.
The thing is that generally gets updated with the next sale.
Yeah. Okay.
So they're the limitations. So that's where they can differ. But like I said, the desktop valuation is there to give you an idea. Your agent is the expert who can then say, no, we can probably get this, or actually we can probably only get this. Like they're the ones that will be able to tell you what their confident contract price will be. The CMA is more there as a guide, gives you an idea as to what's happening in the area and how can we use that data to kind of figure out what this thing's worth.
Okay. So desktop valuation then it can be done properly, and it can be used at the start as a guide.
Yes.
But it can be done incorrectly as well. Say that you actually don't work in property. You just are looking at the data that's available online. That's where
absolutely. Look, there are platforms where investors can go on and kind of do their own research, but without knowing the limitations of that data. So without knowing, that the property may be updated, there might be improvements to the property, and like you've seen it and there are improvements, but when you go to do your research and you type in the address, the information you're getting might not match with what you've seen, but you haven't noticed it. So that's what, like, again, due diligence. I spruiked this in the last episode. Just making sure that you're ticking all the right boxes and you've got the right data. Real estate agents, when they do a CMA, will generally pre-populate comparable sales in an area and then take the time to actually find the most comparable. So instead of just taking the top 5 and saying, yeah, it could be worth this, which is what most people doing their own research might do.
Gotcha.
The real estate agent will say, look, I understand they're saying that, but this property here is actually on 850 squares. Yours is on 500 squares. And unless you're looking for it, you don't really notice it. So the agent will find the most comparable to make that estimate as accurate as possible.
Here at the Property Mentors, we have decades of experience investing in property. We know what to look for and what kind of impact it can have on your portfolio. We have access to brokers, accountants, and property managers to make sure your portfolio performs. Visit thepropertymentors.com.au to learn more.
So what are some of the common misconceptions then about valuations that you've come across in your experience as a conveyancer?
Oh, most common misconceptions. So one of the most common misconceptions is that a desktop valuation is the value of a property. And you and I have just spoken about the fact that they can give you a really good guide as to what it is if they're done right. So if enough time and effort has gone into it, but then you see the other side of the coin with proper valuations where developments might have valuations and then before settlement need to be reevaluated just to make sure that they're still worth what they are and all the rest of that for finance purposes and things like that. You've just got to make sure, again, due diligence. If you are doing the desktop valuation yourself, just make sure you're looking into every aspect of it. Simply clicking into it and saying find some comparable properties and those 5 are okay and those 5 sold for $1 million, so I should get $1 million too, is not the right way to look at it. Purely because the last thing you want to do is go in with really high expectations and have to be brought back down to earth thinking that you could sell your property for $1 million, but it's actually only worth $800,000 in the eyes of buyers in the market right now. So you're better off going in with realistic expectations than hopes and dreams that, no, I did my research and it's worth X. Yeah. And it's like, it's really not. I hear stories all the time of people kind of fighting with their agents over it. Like they'll bicker with their agents over it to say, well, no, that property up the road sold for $1 million. Why can't you get me $1 million? And the agent will have a full-blown list of reasons why. But the internet said I could get $1 million. And that's just make sure you do the proper research. Like the data is there. The data is there and where you can get it and, you can do a bit of research online for free or you can pay for a subscription to something and then it's kind of all collaborated in one area for you to do your research. It's all there for you. It just depends on how much time and effort you invest in doing it. And what's lucky is, your real estate agents will do this for you most of the time when they're coming for listing presentations or whatever it be. And just because Google said you can get $2 million and your agent said you can't, the agent is essentially the expert in the room. I would take them. They've probably sold half the property you're trying to compare the property to.
True.
So that they have a bit more information, background information, and utilise their expertise and their knowledge as much as you can. Most of the time it's free knowledge anyway, so you're better off doing it.
I don't know. If the internet says it, it's usually pretty true, Jason.
But Wikipedia said it. Oh, gosh, all right.
So we've talked through the different types of valuations then. What are some of the benefits and drawbacks of each type of valuation on a property purchase?
So what we'll do is we'll talk about the benefits of each, and the benefits of each kind of differ. So a desktop valuation or a market appraisal is there to give you an idea of what your property's worth, right? They don't take very long to do. There is not a lot of cost associated with getting it done. Most of the time an agent will bring one at a listing presentation so you can get an idea. And basically they're designed to say, hey, this is what the market is doing. This is what your property is worth. And by the way, it took me a day to put this thing together. The flip side of that, so for a sale, that's great because generally when you're looking at selling, you'll do your research, call up a bunch of real estate agents, get them to come down, kind of talk you through it. And these guys can do that in a short period of time, come down and give you a really good idea of what the market says your property may be worth. The flip side of evaluation is it's a lot more accurate, a lot more detailed, goes into things like easements and, conditions of X, Y, and Z and the polish of your floorboards and the size of your bedrooms and the heights of your ceilings. Like it is amazing what it goes into. But you get what you pay for. So they are generally more expensive. The turnaround time is longer. So generally for the sale of a property, if it's just a stock standard sale, so you're looking at selling your house and buying a new one, the benefits associated with getting an actual valuation are non-existent compared to the market appraisal, because the market appraisal is a quick turnaround and telling you what the market in your area is doing. Mm-hmm. That's what you want.
Okay.
So proper valuations take all that into account, but go into a ton more detail. But again, cost, time, and real benefit aren't really worth it when it comes to selling your house.
Yeah. And as far as the desktop valuation, as long as you know what you're looking for and what to assess,
that's it.
It's a great way to do it.
Absolutely.
If you don't know what you're doing, you don't know, and you're just going off really on paper details, that's when it becomes a problem.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's easy to jump on one of the property portals and see the auction results and say, I know property A is the same as mine, property B is similar to mine, and property C is nowhere near mine. And if we look at all those and I were to sell tomorrow, I could probably get somewhere in between property A and B. Like, you could do that yourself.
Yeah.
The difference is that the agent will not only go into a lot more detail, but show you the proof as to how they've come to it. So it's kind of like when you used to do a math class, it's like, show me you working out. That's what the agent will do.
Okay.
So they're definitely the benefits of each. And, kind of you understand why a certain type of real estate transaction will use one and another type of real estate transaction will use the other.
Yeah. No, thank you for clearing all of that up for me and probably any of the other listeners that had a different perspective on desktop valuations at the start.
I'll tell you, it's one of those things that when you hear it, when I was working in property data, we would never use the word valuation because you know what goes into a valuation, and a valuation is generally done by banks. They need to know how much the thing is worth so they know how much money to give you or whatever it be. What these are estimates. We used to have to be very clear about that.
Yeah, that's understandable.
Because we are taking a sample size. We are basically figuring out an average of that, and we're saying you should be able to get that.
Yeah.
And it's giving you a guide without making any promises.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to wrap up, what advice would you give to someone in regards to getting the appropriate valuation done for whatever their circumstances?
Whatever it is. Just, you want to make sure that you cover yourself, right? And generally, most people we're talking about are people transacting properties, right? So they're just looking at selling the family home or whatever it be. Find a good agent. A good agent will do a great market appraisal, and most of the times, when you do a whole bunch of listing presentations with agents, they're going to bring their A game. They're going to want your business. So they will come with a really good market evaluation and they'll come with a detailed CMA and give it to you and show you all the pretty pictures and the maps and all the different properties and how much they sold for and things like that. They're the ones who know what they're talking about. We can all sit here and I can tell you my house is worth $2 million and I know it is, but the agent will tell me it's not.
Yeah.
They're the ones that experience it every day.
Yeah.
So just trust the experts.
Yeah.
That's what it all comes down to, doesn't it?
The ones that do it day in, day out.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Trust the experts. And, how many times, you could sit here and say, but I know, and somebody else gives you some other information. And then you get to the end of that transaction and what that person said was actually right. And it's because they do it day in and day out.
Yeah,
they get it.
They know what to look for.
That's exactly right. They understand it.
Amazing. Well, thank you for talking with me today. I know you're a very busy man, but I appreciate your time.
Thank you. I love being here. Looking forward to the next one.
If you found this episode or any of our episodes helpful, please make sure to share and leave a rating to help us reach more people on their investing journeys. And of course, subscribe to be notified when new episodes drop. Make sure to follow the podcast on Instagram at Investor Intelligence Podcast. You can find links to our other socials in the show notes, including a link to the Property Mentors weekly blog. If you're ready to get your property portfolio in shape for financial freedom, check out Luke's latest book, Property Fit. You can get yourself a copy at www.propertyfitbook.com.au.